Hello, everybody. Welcome to my presentation on childhood trauma. We're going to call this one a trauma in time. Trauma. Over time, we have learned what trauma is and how it can show up in the mind and body. We know that trauma can stem from things like working out too hard, to acute and chronic injuries and freak accidents, to things like experiencing shootings, wars, and abuse. Trauma refers to the ongoing changes in the nervous system, thinking systems, and means of personality, attachment, and capacity for relationships that affect our ability to cope and communicate with the world around us. Traumatic events can be frightening and potentially dangerous and ultimately threaten the overall sense of safety and security that exists within. Whether or not an experience is traumatic or not is based on every scenario, the person experiencing it, and how they connect to the severity of the experience. Though we often become aware of this once we are older and more aware of these cycles that we tend to repeat, rarely do we analyze the depths and durations of experiencing such traumas. For some people, trauma is experienced at a very young age. However, due to current cultures not offering parents and families the proper resources to create conditions of safety and security, it's often dismissed. Because of this, children often become overwhelmed and their capacity to cope decreases, which opens the door for traumatization. In this paper, I will be focusing on childhood trauma and its effects on the body and how massage therapy can help. Do you know the trauma man? The trauma man? The trauma man. Yes, we know the trauma man. And truth is, he's not even a man or a woman. Trauma has no gender, just like childhood abuse and neglect has no gender, no race, no ethnicity. It can happen to both young girls and boys, and often at the hand of someone who is supposed to be a protector or provider. For children, trauma can be brought on by older siblings, step-parents, in-laws, coaches, teachers, just to name a few. Have you ever heard of a story where a young child may have been dropped on their head or just dropped in general, then heard an adult say something like, "Oh, he's just a baby, he'll be fine. He won't even know what happened." Or the case where a child starts acting out of the blue and no one seems to understand. So instead of addressing the situation at hand, it gets dismissed with the excuse and example, "They'll just grow out of it." What about the scenario where a child arrives home to see that their house caught on fire unexpectedly and realizes that everything they love material-wise is gone? Ever been the young person seeking guidance from someone older or considered superior just to be ignored or ridiculed? How did it make you feel? It made you want to shut down and isolate, right? Right. Well, maybe. Though not all children experience the same signs and symptoms, isolating is a common symptom. Children who suffer from traumatic stress often experience behavioral changes when reminded in some way of a traumatic event. It is also common that they've experienced multiple traumas throughout their lives and have created coping mechanisms to better get through their day. In the first 5 years of life, experiences and relationships stimulate children's development, which can be detrimental to the children when trauma is experienced around those years. Although many of us experience reactions to stress from time to time, when a child is experiencing traumatic stress, these reactions interfere with the child's daily life and ability to function and interact with others. For a child who may have experienced a physical injury at a young age, their body starts to develop fascia lines based on the impact of their body from the trauma. The great thing about the body is, whether big or small, the moment it detects that there's something going on, it goes into action mode to compensate for the injured area to try and maintain a balanced body. Every time the body experiences stress on it, the signals go to our connective tissue throughout the body, which usually causes a contraction of muscles, resulting in the creation of new tension lines that change the flow of functionality of our body parts and systems. When trauma occurs, our body activates a protective mechanism. When the stressor becomes too much for a person to handle, the nervous system goes into an overload, stopping the trauma from processing. This stops the body from experiencing fight or flight, which causes that energy to be stored in the surrounding muscles, organs, and tissues. For children, sometimes we find that the way that they deal with trauma, however, is freezing and shutting down when it comes to the fight or flight instincts. Their little heart starts pumping excessive amounts of blood, experiences changes in breath, and experiences a shift in the muscle tension in the stomach. Sadly, for children, they lack the ego strength and abilities to cope with trauma, which causes them to experience things like hypersensitivity or a decrease in emotional reaction, which disrupts the child's development. Some of these signs may look like excessive crying and screaming, excessive clinginess, wetting the bed, poor eating habits, anxiety, trouble sleeping, difficulty concentrating, withdrawal, and feeling alone. Signs of traumatic stress in children may be more evident in some than others. Some may take longer to show due to the environments they may be around. Studies show that students who show signs of trauma may not be able to articulate it because of their age or social stigmas attached to trauma. Whenever we store trauma in our tissue, our brain experiences a disconnect from that part of the body, preventing true recollection of the traumatic memory. The unfortunate part of being disconnected from your parts of your body means that you limit your body's ability to self-heal. Stored trauma is very likely to breed disease and degeneration of cells, bone, mind, and spirit. For children, long-term effects of trauma can include asthma, coronary disease, depression, and diabetes, to say the least. Childhood trauma and massage. Massage has been shown to have a long-lasting effect on children, like improvement in interactions, depression and anxiety, sleeping, and overall development and growth. Massages like Swedish massage is great for reducing cortisol levels and increasing dopamine and serotonin levels. Because individuals usually suffer from hyperarousal in very tense areas in their body, massage can be particularly beneficial in relieving trauma tension. Cortisol is the stress hormone that kicks on the anxiety, the fight or flight, and then the freeze. Serotonin is what helps us to relax and reduce our perception of pain and regulate our mood. And dopamine, well, you know dopamine. It's just the feel-good drug. It's what makes us feel good. So, with consent from the child and the guardian, massage can be a great way to reconnect with the child to better understand their needs. Incorporating holistic and alternative practices like aromatherapy, sound healing, and Reiki into your practices can create a safe environment where you can offer therapeutic massage treatment that will truly aid in a reconnection to the body. The power of touch is often underestimated, but it can truly reconnect you back to your mind, body, and back to history. We often overlook the fact that trauma is common and exists in our children and the impact that it plays on our development. But hopefully by sharing a few examples of what trauma may look like in children, it will inspire you to take a further look at the kids around you and see if you may be noticing any signs. The reason I chose to do childhood trauma as my project was because this is something that I experienced growing up, and it wasn't until I was older that I realized that childhood trauma was something that I experienced. My association with trauma was pretty extreme, so it often caused me to overlook things that were very much so indeed traumatic. I'm sure y'all love to hear me talk for another 3 minutes. However, I'm just going to give you this time to take a second and pause this and just read story time. Here you can find some of my experiences with childhood traumas and why I advocate for massage therapy. Thank you all for your time and watching, and yeah.